This time on the laboratory, we're going to be working on an Isle of Doom lighthouse. This was sent in to get repaired, which some of it was already broken, which was put in these baggies before shipping. But the box it came in was smashed. So I think the rest of this damage was done, or part of it was done after the fact. So, I don't know if you can see, I can move the top, but this isn't moving because this isn't attached very well. This over here is broke free. Yeah, all these little pieces. So I'm not sure how much of this was broke prior to it coming, but I don't think the flattened UPS box helped it any. There's a lot of work that's going to have to be done on this. So the fix list that came with it was the lights. Apparently all the lights don't work. The pirate coming in and out of the door doesn't work, which is this guy right here. I'm going to tip this in a second. The fogging skull system isn't working right here. And the lighthouse top, which I think is the broken pieces. This one says random parts, so we'll figure out where those go. It's pretty obvious where this goes, which was right here. Plus there's a picture on the original packaging because this came in the original packaging. But with it already being partially disassembled from the person that owned it as well as UPS, might be a little bit easier to work on since there's less stuff I have to separate to get to the mechanisms. I did notice just by feeling this is a foam rubber. This is foam. That's a first, but it makes sense because it's easier to sculpt, especially mold. So, and then this is resin. So if you have this piece, you probably already know this. If you don't have this piece, now you know. This is all resin. This here is resin, even though it looks porcelain. Actually, it might be porcelain. Hold on. It is. It's porcelain or ceramic, sorry. The center's plastic. This is resin. These pieces down here that aren't really attached very well anymore. All the rock is foam. Which, like I said, I'll break the glue on this one too. It's just glue. Lets you get into the stuff like right here. We got a screw and a mechanism. There's the pirate. And on the bottom, there's some Sharpie marks too about no screw. The screw hot in, I can't read upside down very well. Screw not in tack, just pops out. Okay. And might as well just remove all the big chunks of foam, get them out of the way so we can look at the main mechanism and then get this thing glued back together if we can get it fully functional. So the main mechanism exposed, or the majority of it, we have your power and volume. You can see the porcelain or ceramic. We got a screw that goes through, we got an empty hole, we got a bar hole with another screw, which is very reminiscent of what's right here. Looks like we got some more broken pieces right here that aren't coming out because they have wires glued to the bottom, so that means that we got some lights that probably illuminate the barrel and or the step ladder. See if I can get that to straighten up a little. So, because that gets glued right like so. You can see the glue marks on the face. I see a white piece of moving plastic right here. I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but I can move it back and forth on a shaft. There's a metal shaft that's connecting and this thing slides freely. We got some more hot glue right here. This whole panel moves, so it probably lifts. I don't have this piece, so I don't know exactly what it does. And the fogger mechanism, this one has a fan right here. nothing in the disc. Looks like there's the part that actually makes the fog. Most of the house is separating. Oh, you can see how I can flex it. So the glue that goes around it is almost completely gone. Looks like really the only thing holding this in place is this screw right here. So maybe we should just take it out and see if I can remove the whole top and get a gander of what's inside. Lots of pieces. So, remove the glue. There's our internals. We got 1, 2, 3 circuit boards. We have a large metal casting that one of the circuit boards is attached to, possibly for reinforcement and a heat sink. We have a motor right here, a flat hobby motor attached to the back of the speaker. It's kind of weird. We have another metal reinforcement right here. So we got a metal, looks like aluminum block there, and another one right here. We have some wires that come out that go to the fogger, which the fogger, not a clue why it doesn't work. Doesn't look to be in the best shape, but we'll have to take a look at it. It might just be dirty. Hard water is good at doing that to fogging units. This screw is attached to that metal bracket, that metal reinforcement that goes up here. It stops before the windows. That hole doesn't line up with anything that I could see. I'm going to remove more of this glue. So, this one's going to be a treat to try and resurrect. But in this first part here, this first 8 minutes, we're going to just basically look at how it showed up. Figure out we're going to be losing a lot of glue, both super and hot, because we got glue residue everywhere. Apparently this at one point probably broke off, since we got glue here and here, and we got glue here on the this bottom piece. I got to find these wires, which I'm sure went down this hole right here, get them reassembled so we can try and get all the lights working. Got to find out if it's a bad circuit board, a bad motor, a bad power supply, which did come with the unit. The power supply is right here, and it is a standard 4.5 volts. So we're going to continue here in just a few. Again, I'm just going to clean off some of this excess glue. You can see the cannon, which also has a wire, so I'm sure the front of it lights up. That'd be kind of cool. It's separating as well. You can flex it. You can see the glue right here. So yeah, this is a jigsaw puzzle with a picture, but it's a jigsaw puzzle that has some other issues as well. So I'm gonna clear off some space, and then we're gonna delve into this, starting with the electronics. So I'll return in a moment. All right, I got the power supply set. I got a meter. We're gonna plug it in and see if anything works. Hopefully it's not shorted out from the broken wires. Well, I do hear something moving. See about the volume. I have no lights and I have some noise. I think the noise is coming from that little motor. Let's take a look. Alright, well, the fan here just came on. I have no sound. I have something in here moving, and then the fan. And that's it. So, not quite sure what failed where, but we're going to have to take this all apart. There's even lights inside the water basin down here. I'd like to get this to tip all the way, but it's putting a lot of stress on these wires. All in here for the fogger. So, this thing is kind of a mess. All the broken pieces everywhere. Alright, so the motor I'm hearing is the one that turns the spotlight right here. So, apparently, out of everything, the only thing that's working is the fan right here for the fog, and that. I gotta see if I can remove this basin, so I can separate this base completely, so I can get in here and take a better look. Because, even though I can tip this over, like I was saying, the wires for this basin, for the lights and the fogger itself, which is in here, and there's 4 screws, is too tight. And I don't feel like shearing off all the wires. Yeah, pulling all these right here. But I want to get these circuit boards out and start probing around with the meter to find out what or where my power losses are, and see if this is repairable. You know what? Use that as a prop. Can't get the circuit board screws out, but I might be able to get the whole bracket out, like so. this circuit board here looks like it controls the fogger, because all the wires coming off of it are the red and black wires for the fogger. Circuit board itself looks intact. I don't see any burns, discoloration. So now let's see if I can get the other two circuit boards out. Looks like the screw that they use to attach it to this is they're full of goop. They probably used a glue or something to hold it in place, which is why I can't get a screwdriver to bite. But now I'm going to take out the screw in the back, which holds the next one. Like that. The wires are too short for me to get it all the way out. Take a closer look. But we'll see. Let's see how this last circuit board is held in. This last one appears just to be held in glue, but the speaker and the motor mechanism for this pirate is in the way. I'm going to see if I can show you what I'm dealing with. See if I can support this and get a little closer to the camera. So here's the aluminum brackets that have, here's the fogger circuit board right there. Here is one of the other main circuit boards right here, which I can now get out. And then that is the primary circuit board, which there's no screws. It's just glued into the wire loom, and trying to pop this up, it's going to smack the speaker and the motor. That's the motor right there that makes this work. So either that motor's bad, or I'm not getting power to it from one of these other circuit boards. Then there's a motor right here, right inside this, which I'm assuming controls this and that at the same time. And then we got the motor right here, which does the fan. Oh, nope, this motor's separate. There's another motor way down in there for the light. So this thing's got 4 different motors. So I am going to see what I can do about getting this further apart so I can do some more testing. And I'll probably take out these screws to check the mister leads, because the mister leads are common. When they get corroded, they don't work. And this actually has 4 screws to remove the housing. So we're going to check that too. I'm going to get some water ready as well. So once I verify power here, we can turn it on and see if it actually does any misting or fogging. So bear with me for a moment, and I shall return. All right. I got the screws out. There's 5. So there's 4 here, and there's 1 over here in the corner. The disc is corroded. It's green. That might be why the fogger is not working. To get to the fogger disc, you'd have to remove this from the base, which is hard glued down. But we're going to test it. I scrape some of the corrosion off with a screwdriver. Try and scrape some more. The two probes that send the signal for the water, they're clean. Surprisingly, I thought they'd be corroded too, but they're clean. So, took pictures of the circuit boards like I normally recommend you do, just in case the wires break. You know where they go. And I still haven't been able to figure out how to get out that main board without potentially damaging other stuff. So I'll have to keep looking at that. So I'm gonna plug this back in, turn it back on, tip it out of my way, and got a brand new bottle of water. Just enough to coat the bottom. And then you can try and put the probes in there, or you can short the probes out. When you short the probes out, it's supposed to turn on the disc. Which isn't doing anything. So bring out the meter, and I'm assuming this red and black wire here for the disc, and the white and black wire for the light, which is over there in the corner. So I'm going to try and trace this red and black wire back to the circuit board and check for power. Because the other black and red wire go to these two leads, these two water probes, which have 0 volts, which is how they should be. Because this is just continuity. When the water connects the two probes, you have, it's like a water switch. The water becomes the continuity and connects the two together, so you get signal or power. So let's turn this thing over, see where the wires are soldered. A little extra light in this subject. They fed the wire through and they cut it, and then they use glue to hold them together with solder. So I might be able to check the connection here easier than checking it on the bottom of the board, because I don't want it smacking the heat sink. So I'm going to use the water like it's intended. Well, the reservoir appears to be holding. I don't see any water leaking out the bottom. There you go. Now I have the water switch engaged. And I'm going to try and poke through the hot glue to the solder balls and see if I get any voltage. None. Let's see what we got. I'm getting about about 3/4 of a volt. I don't think that's enough to turn that thing on. A lot more difficult than it appears, I'll tell you that. They actually coated the bottom of these circuit boards, probably to protect them from the moisture. And either I'm not getting through the coating very well, or I'm not getting any power. And that's what I'm wondering, is if I'm not getting any power. The sound works now.
Shoreline and weathered lighthouse on the Isle of Doom.
That guy's working.
Show yourself. I pity anyone who survives and manages to set foot on this cursed soil. There be no.
Okay, I think I know some of the problem now. It has a reset, and it's got micro switches. And pulling on these wires, I pushed the circuit board back, which relieves pressure on this motor. Remember I mentioned a moment ago they were glued next to each other. Once it did that, there was a click, which engaged the relay, and wow, look at that. The sound, which is part of the problem, and the pirate started working, which is why the system got louder. I don't know if you heard the motor sound on the camera get physically louder. So it's an odd thing, but apparently this circuit board, I don't know if it was re-glued in or not, is pushing on the mechanism right here just enough to hold it out of place. Poking around in here, I'm putting a little bit of pressure on the circuit board because I'm trying to pry the probe in through the sealant on the bottom of this board, and it freed up the mechanism. So it's kind of a secondary repair. I mean, it's a repair that was requested. It says fix the pirate. It doesn't come out. Fix the fogger, fix the lights, and fix the sound. So there you go. Sometimes it's amazing. You can fix more than one thing when you're just trying to fix something else. So I'm going to have to figure out some way to shift this circuit board and relieve tension off of this drive that's right here. It's possible that the circuit board just shifted on its own, that the glue is breaking down and it's pulling away, or it's been re-glued in and it's not glued in far enough back. So we'll take a look at that. Right now I'm more concerned on this thing. I think the Mr. plate is bad. The corrosion, it's not leaking still. I mean, there's no liquid coming out around and the water's not dropping, which is a positive. But I think I'm going to have to cut the wire and then test it directly, since I can't get through the bottom of the board, and I don't want to heat up the board to break the glue residue off for the sealing of the board. It's easier just to cut the wire, resolder it, and re-hot glue it or cover it in liquid electrical tape to keep it away from the moisture and keep a good connection. So I think that's where we're going to go next. I'm not going to cut the sensor wires, the red and the black. I'm only going to cut these red and black. I'm going to cut the 2 wires that go down here that are the ones in the back, and I'm going to cut them pretty much right at the solder joints. That. So I can move that out of the way, and now I can pull these 2 wires through the hole in the porcelain. Gonna need meal nose. And then I can pull them out so I have more to work with. Let's see if I can... There's so much glue they used on this one. See if I can try and push them through as well. They're glued to other wires in here, so I'm going to try and push them through a little bit. I wish I could show you it better, but this is a heavy little house, and there's no room for the camera or even me to work on this. Alright, I got the black wire through. Red wire stuck. There we go. Stuck on the glue. Here is the 2 wires for the fogger. Right here and right here. Apparently it's gone back to its doesn't want to work stage. So the fogger is getting zero volts. It's technically getting a, 0 volts, 0.04. See if I can get this thing to turn back on. I have a broken ground. When I touch the ground, doing stuff too. I got power maybe bleeding through. I do. I got 1.5 volts of bleed through onto the 2 different casings. One's positive, one's negative. Yeah. I wish I could see inside better. Well, I'm definitely going to have to work on this some more. Find out what is all failed. Apparently one of the wires in here isn't correct. Probably got broke and I got to find it. Because I shouldn't have energized brackets. And it won't reset the reset again. So the volume's on. Alright, well, when they touch, everything gets faster. So I got a broken ground or a broken connection. I can't get this reset to engage, the one right here. And I'm getting no power now to this motor. Even if I touch the two together, I get no power. So, alright, I gotta figure out how to get the rest of this apart. I'll be back once I figure it out. I'll let you know what I did, if I can get it out without breaking it. That's the whole point. And then maybe I can trace it back to find out why I'm getting no power to the fogger. Although I am getting, you know, continuity through the water, and I am getting continuity with the two probes. Something's not reading something, and I think it has, there's some wire somewhere in this cluster in this corner, if you remember when I picked it up, that is broke, sheared, or arcing, causing a problem. Because it's a 4.5 volt unit, I get 3.5 volts of power, or 3 volts of power, but when I touch these two brackets together, which are actually connected with a wire, so that means the wire is probably bad, I get 4.5 volts of power and everything speeds up. Still no lights, not sure why. The lights come off of the circuit board that's up here in this corner, so I'm going to have to get it out to see if maybe there's a broken wire or if the lighting circuit is fried, which is possible. Arc wires can do a lot of damage to the circuit boards. And this circuit board up here also controls the sound, which was working for a moment, and most of the motion. These two circuit boards here look like they mainly control this, the fogger, the mister system. Because the only thing that comes off of these two circuit boards are the wires for the lights in the mister and the sensors. So these two circuit boards here get main power from the big board. This little guy here connects this one here, which then splits off to this set of wires, these wires, and the wires right here for this motor, which spins this fan. So these two circuit boards work together, and between the two of them there's a problem, since it's not getting full voltage till they touch each other, and inside this unit they're not touching each other. But regardless, the only thing that's getting power from these two circuit boards is this motor, since we get a little bit of, we get the fan spinning here. We still don't have any lights, and we don't have any, well, water misting action. So yeah, so this is kind of a conundrum. So I'm going to work on it some more. See if I can get this apart. See if I can find out if there's a bad component or a bad wire underneath it. Hopefully I can do it without damaging the speaker or mechanism for here. And most likely I'm just going to have to heat it up and slowly pull it out of its hot glue pocket. And then I'm going to do what I've done on a few other ones that make them long and boring. I'm going to give it power. I'm going to test where all the power sources are. Then I'm going to turn them off and then test the resistance and capacitance levels of all the components to see if something is so far out of tolerance or if it's popped, meaning it's open and no longer a viable component. And then we'll go from there. Now I'll have to do it to all 3 circuit boards. These 2 little guys here shouldn't be too hard. There are not very many things on them. Like this board here has a capacitor, 5 resistors, and a diode, and then 1 power regulator. This one over here, though, has some big diodes, a transistor, 2 coils, 5 capacitors, 1, 2, 3 resistors. Yeah, but I'm going to be a little bit more fun. So, and then of course I need to test these to see if either they're not getting power or if all of the LEDs have popped, which would be really rare since this thing has a half a dozen or more just over here, let alone the rest of the unit. It is possible. I mean, the wires are sheared up here and they're inside, but they don't appear to be touching each other. Yeah, like this, you can see the wires are connected, even though it's no longer glued to its housing. It's not touching each other. So, anyway, before this thing gets super long and super boring as I'm sitting here just poking around trying to figure out where it is failing or failed, we're going to stop, and once I find it, I'll show you. So I'm hoping I can find it. I shall be returned here shortly. Alright, I've been working on this off and on, waiting for some parts to show up. If you can see the water's moving, it's because I finally got that disc to start working, but it's not misting. I have it jumped right now with a pair of alligator clips to pretend like it's got full of water. The water in here is only about a 1/16 inch deep. So I am getting the disc to vibrate, but it's not misting. I've been soaking the disc with a little vinegar and water to try and break down the corrosion, which it has broke down, but it's still not misting. That's just, well, it's dirty water, but it's water. The specks is dust and dirt and stuff falling out of the house. But to show you, I have this set on hertz, and this thing is pumping out 1.77 megahertz. That's why they're called ultrasonic mist discs, is because they run at a huge frequency, a really large frequency that's above the hearing range of, well, humans. So, but I don't know what it's supposed to run at. I was trying to look it up. It just says they run at an ultra high frequency, which 1.77 megahertz is a high frequency. But I'm still not getting anything else working, even though I've been slowly replacing components or taking things apart. Like I got the top off here to reset the micro switch. If I send power to the components individually, I can get the lights to light up, I can get the guy to move. Of course, this already spins and this one spins. This motor, I don't know what it's supposed to do. I know it spins, but I don't know what was attached here or what function it served. So I also grabbed the other one that was sitting here, which is right here, which is why now there's 2 on screen. This one, though, is a different version. This one doesn't have the mist. This is just lights and sounds. The only thing that moves on this is the light in the center. Everything else is just solid. There's nothing there. It's doesn't have the mister inside or anything. I was using this to try and figure out what's supposed to be in here, and then I realized this one doesn't have the mister. This doesn't come off. This is plastic, not foam, or resin, not foam. It's a different version. So, so all I gotta do with this is listen to the sound and see what light colors are what. Because I know there's a light inside the cannon. We got a light here, lights there, light in the mouth, light here. There's just lights sporadically sticking out of the structure, so I can at least see what these lights are supposed to look like using the one that is the 2nd gen without the mister and the animation. I'm assuming they stopped making it with the animation because of the failure rate, because I can see this thing failing. It uses a high frequency generator, which is this circuit board right here, which is why it's got all these large components on it. It takes the 4.45 volts DC, converts it into AC, and then at a super high frequency. And I can see this stuff failing since there is a problem with it. It's not misting, and if I separate the two circuits, you notice everything got quieter, which is what I was telling you before. All the connections are good. I have no idea why, but one side has got power, one side doesn't. I'm assuming that it has a bad voltage regulator, which is what these, let's separate these again, which is what these big chips are right here that are screwed into these monster heat sinks. I ordered a couple of voltage regulators. Unfortunately, they didn't show up. So, yay. I have other voltage regulators, but they're different, and I don't know if changing them is going to affect the functionality of this at all at the moment. But testing every component, the diodes are working, the capacitors are working, the induction on the coils is working. This multimeter can test virtually everything. I have good power going through the main circuit board, but I'm not getting the signals from the main circuit board. I'm thinking the blob chip that controls everything is starting to fail. Because I had it working at one, time for 10 seconds, and that was it. And that's when I was, I thought I was just moving the micro switch just right here. I was also wiggling the circuit board to get to it. I've checked all the solder joints. I've checked all the powers. I've checked for broken wires or shorted wires. I have not found any reason why this thing is not working, since every component in itself individually works as it's supposed to. So I'm leaning towards it's got a bad blob chip. Now this chip right here, this black chip, hopefully you can see it on the screen, that's a timing chip. That chip works in conjunction with these transistors for the lights, especially since the Canon flashes and the lights fade in and out, a couple of them. That chip is just the timing chip. And I do know that high frequency generators can cause fatigue on other items. During my day job, they used to use high frequency generators on certain model hot tubs for generating neon. And them high frequency generators interfered viciously with the stereo system and the sometimes the topside controller. So they had to start moving these little controllers away from everything, and it would pick up interference on other devices. So I'm not sure if maybe because of how close in relationship the high frequency generator section is, which this is a smoothing section, so the power coming through the main board doesn't get backfed from this. This is the generator, the one with the big diodes and the big capacitors and the coils. And this appears just to be the smoothing. The power comes in, it goes through, this circuit board then powers this circuit board, and it powers this motor that's up here. The other two motors are powered off the main board. So I don't know if this motor has because it's got micro switches and it reverses polarities, if it causes a spike and it has to be smoothed through this big capacitor. I'm not quite sure why they designed it the way they did. All I can tell you is this is what I've been finding out by working on it for the last few days intermittently while waiting for some parts to show up. Like I ordered a new disc, but before tearing this thing out and trying to reseal it, I figured I'd try one more time by looking up the schematics and the functionality of that disc to see how they work, why they work, not why they work, we know why they work, but how they work, the power consumption, and the only thing I can't find is the hertz range to see if this is correct. And I don't know which specific model they use, and I was trying to find one of my parts houses that had an ultrasonic disc, but I think I sent it to somebody to repair theirs. So I can't test the one I can't find. So, but at the moment, working on this and probing everything, it's looking to be that we're not getting correct signal from the main board right here on the left, the yellowish board, the other two are green. Even if I jump both or one at a time, micro switches, there's one on the bottom, there's one on the top, which is why this has now been separated. If I send power, like I said, to every component individually, the motors, the lights, everything works. Except for the sound, because the sound is controlled by the blob chip. But as soon as you disconnect the individual power supply and then reconnect the main power, I know a couple of things right now won't work, like the LED down here and the LED in here, the wires are broke. They're just kind of dangling like this one. This is the light that's down here, right there. And then the light that's up here, there's two. There's one here, one here. The wire is also disconnected. So I'm fully aware that a couple of things aren't going to function at the moment because they were severed or broke upon removing, since they have this big glue bung. But everything else is functioning independently from the circuit boards, minus the sound, since it cannot test it. If I send power directly to this board to feed this board will activate, but this motor does not. That's where I'm getting my my confusion from. But if I send power to the motor works fine. Guy moves in and out like he's supposed to. So there's a signal issue somewhere, and I'm trying to track down and trace. It may not be repairable, as much as I hate to say it. Sometimes the electrical issues, if it's an obvious problem like a capacitor, resistor is burned, or a diode, or transistor, they can, in most cases, be replaced without a problem, or even an LED. Those are a dime a dozen. You get hundreds of them for a couple dollars. But if this blob chip is damaged, or is not getting correct signal, or it's not sending correct signal, the house is just going to sit there and hum, and it's because it's not resetting. This is a resettable house. It has to reset. That's why there's only two micro switches right here, trying to reset those two micro switches. And it doesn't recognize the switches, whether I disconnect them or I open the micro switch up so they're both open, or close them both. Currently they're both closed. In this position they're both closed, and that's kind of throwing me for a loop because usually one is open, one is closed. So I was separating one and then the other, trying to get that motor to engage to see if I can get the sound back, like I did a few moments ago in the video. But I'm going to keep working on it until I can either find diagnose it and see if it's repairable, or if I can find that it is not repairable because it has a bad controller. Now, because this is a different model, probably a Gen 2, the only thing that's the same on this is half of this circuit board. The transistors for the lights and the sound, that's it. So even thinking, oh, I could swap this board for that board and see if I can get this one to function, it doesn't have the rest of the components to send everything over here and control it, which means it could have a backfeeding issue and then fry the other board. But this one, the lights, sound, and the motion of the top light work just like they're supposed to. It's just this one does not, because this one is the, I guess you would say, the more fancy one, the more expensive version of this piece. Bases are basically the same, the layout, paint job, etc. It's just this one's got a fogger and more animation. This one has less animation and of course no fogger. So I don't know. I guess I think they're just two different generations. Just trying to see if there's a year on this. Nope, no year. So anyway, just want to give you an update since I'm trying to get this one done as soon as possible, because I have some other ones I got to get working on, or that I have started that the parts have finally come in for. So that way we can try and help anybody out there that has similar houses and get them all, hopefully all up and running for you. So, but at the moment, that's where I'm at. I just want to give you all a quick heads up that I can get this to vibrate but not mist. I can get all the motors and lights to work except for the 3 that are disconnected at the moment by sending power directly to it. And the generator is working. I just don't know if that's the correct megahertz frequency. The main circuit board is getting power, but the components are not sending the power out because this little chip has to send the signal to each of these little transistors to tell it to turn on and off as it's supposed to. Well, it sends it to 5 of them. 2 of them are for the flashing lights. But they're not getting the signal, which is leading me to believe that the blob chip might be on its way out or has failed. But I'm still going to play with it a little bit more. Just want to give you a quick update of where we're at. So this video isn't 4 hours long. And we'll go from there. So as soon as I get to the next section and try and figure out what's going on, I'll come back and hopefully either get it working and describe what I did or let you know the status at that point. Alright. After playing with this and checking everything out and going through it all, I found the problem. So, I'm going to turn this down. Well, it might need a new volume knob. Let me turn off some light here. Look.
Many a ship has been lost here on Dead Man's Reef, and the angry, wretched souls of that scum of the sea still ravage and haunt the battered shoreline and weathered lighthouse, the Isle of Doom.
So, cannon's flashing. See the red of my finger, hopefully. He's going in and out. Some of the lights are working. The ones that aren't cut are working. We got lights inside. You can see them down through here. That light's on. Of course, these lights are cut at the moment. Sorry, caught my finger. Because it's actually spinning at a higher speed now. So, figured out what was wrong with this thing. Let me turn it off. There we go. And it's something I should have checked right off the get-go. It would have made life so much easier. Wouldn't have had to disassemble as much as I did. I could have just gone into the repair side of putting this thing back together since it looks like Humpty Dumpty. This was the problem. Bad power supply. Got another power supply. Hey, and it works. So, yeah, that was great. Spent all this time taking it apart, voltage testing it, getting improper voltages, thinking that I had a bad power regulator chip on the boards, and it turns out that they're not bad. They're not getting enough juice to do their job. So, but I also did acquire a parts house because this thing is in so many pieces. That way we can rebuild the shell or put all this into the parts house because this part is in much better shape. So it didn't get all busted up in shipping and stuff. So everything works. And how this works is a 24 volt AC unit. Very important. It's not a 4.5 volt DC or a 12 volt or a 6 volt or 9 volt DC. Excuse me, which is the most common of all of the Lemax pieces. Unless it's an accessory, then some are 3 or 4.5 volt as well. This is specifically 24 volts AC. And then it uses these chips to change it to DC. That's actually what these are. This is a rectifier. Just had a chance to go through and work on this thing. It rectifies the power from AC back to DC for the components that are DC, such as the motors that control the 3 moving objects, and the fan, so 4, and the lights, so they don't flicker. And I don't mean flicker, they're intended to flicker. I mean flicker because AC causes lights to flicker. Easiest way is if it's Christmas time, you see somebody has an LED Christmas light display, wave your hand in front of your eyes and you'll see the flicker. That's because those lights are flashing 60 times a second on AC, because we are at 60 hertz in the United States. Yeah, that was the problem. Most of the problem with me getting anything working on this entire God knows how long, because I haven't checked the time, video, is Bad power supply. Unbelievable. So, with a bad power supply solved, we're now going to take the parts house and I'm going to just swap some of the guts over so it's not all busted up. Then I'll use this one as a parts house for the future. So this does work. I touched the wires and I got the disc to vibrate, and I didn't put any water in it. I just got it to vibrate. So yeah. So now you know how to take it apart, kinda. It was mostly apart when I got it. But we'll do a quick recap. You shouldn't have to remove the circuit boards with those long screws that go through the porcelain. So I wouldn't recommend removing these unless you absolutely need to get to them, like a wire broke or one of the components exploded and you're going to solder a new one on. The fingers that go through here, the plastic fingers that screw in on the little plastic bosses that stick up, that's what holds the main porcelain body on. You are going to have to separate some of the glue around the unit to get the rest of it to separate. The foam skull is supposed to have a clip that's connected right here. This house doesn't have it. The parts house does. So we're gonna, like I said, we're gonna use 2 different pieces, and I'm just gonna build one complete one, which will be in better shape. It won't have as much chipped porcelain and stuff. So, and this piece up here that's shattered into little pieces, the other one is perfectly fine, so I'm not going to spend an hour gluing and taping everything together. It's just not worth the time, especially if you can get parts houses. Look around, you can find them here and there and everywhere, mostly online, but we'll see. Sometimes I find them at Goodwill or a thrift store in general. So once you remove those 2 fingers, you can literally lift this off. I would recommend removing all of the foam body pieces around it, which is the fake stone, all the way around the sides and back. It's just held on with hot glue. You can see this is just hot glue. That's why it peels off so easy. Even the parts house, this was hot glue. You can use hard glue on it, but there's no point. Hard glue is great and all, and it has its practical purposes for like reassembling all this stuff. Hard glue is great. But if you're on something that's foam, the hot glue can technically melt the foam, but you're not as likely to do as much damage because you're not going to be holding it onto the foam. You're not going to have your glue gun at full temperature just sitting here like this to where it melts everything. You're going to be getting it hot, and then you're going to be running a bead, and then you're going to be sticking it on. And again, not this piece. This is what you have to remove to add water. So once you do that, remove the fingers, and then carefully break it free of any of its over glued areas, like this glue that held this corner down, and the glue that held this corner down or here is probably the glue they use to seal this, because this doesn't come off very easy, pretty much at all at the moment. So once you do that, you can then tip the unit. Once you tip the unit, you have access relatively easy to the motors. You got one right there by my thumb. You got one that's a little harder, which is right in here. Let me turn the light back on. Give you a little bit of, you might be able to see it better. Then you have the one that's all the way in, which controls this light. And then, of course, last but not least, you have this motor, which is technically the easiest to get to, because you don't even have to disassemble it. You can get to that motor just by removing this shroud. All 3 motors are the same. They're standard hobby motors. They are not the round ones that most people are used to, like that. They're the flat on the top and bottom. I forgot what the actual name is, but they are used in multiple things, and they come in multiple sizes. Here's an example of a large one that apparently had something stuck to it. So you can see it's flat and round, but this is probably 2.5 times as big as these. But this way you can see Amazon, eBay, you can get these motors anywhere. They're a dime a dozen hobby motor. Heck, I've gotten a handful of them from a Goodwill in science kits, so you'd be surprised. So anyhow, so that's how you access the motors. Hopefully you never have to open this. The gearbox and micro switches that are in here for the guy who opens and closes the door, as you can see, works perfectly fine now with the correct power supply voltage. One micro switch is accessible from the top. If you can carefully break off his cabin, you can access this one from up here and resolder it right here. You don't have to disassemble his whole body. If you have to, the second one's down here in the bottom, which you have to take the top off to desolder and resolder and then glue them. The micro switches are glued in place, so when you break them free, try to glue them back where you found them. I would recommend a hard glue, super, Gorilla, whatever you prefer. Not hot glue. You don't want the micro switches to move, because then it causes them to not do their job, which causes the motor to try and rotate in a direction it can no longer rotate in, which can burn up the motor, circuit board, or break the gearbox. So micro switches are important. That's the stopper that tell the mechanism to stop going up, down, left, right, in, out, whatever the hell it's supposed to do. So this, and this have no micro switches. Once they get power, they just run. This runs in a 360-degree circle, 360-degree circle. This one uses a 360-degree circle as well, which is the guy that wobbles back and forth on his barrel. It's just that it has an eccentric cam, so as it goes in a circle, the dude on the top is waving back and forth. So they're not going to normally break unless you try and hold the things. Try and hold this light. Try and hold the guy in the barrel. Guy in the barrel, you're most likely going to break the stem and not the motor. This one, if you held the fan, you will burn up the motor. If the fan is getting weak, it'll just spin the armature inside the fan itself. So, it's relative. So you should never really have to open this unless you need to get access to the bottom here or to replace your volume or on-off switch. So, for the most part, spent all this time doing everything, and I did the one thing I always tell you not to do is, our first thing to do is check your power supply. So that was my bad. But now we know what the inside looks like. So now I'm going to spend a little bit of time rebuilding the other one. And I'm going to come back when we're done and show you the parts house, which has a good body, bad electronics, and I'm just going to swap them over. I'm just going to cut the wires and then solder the colors back together, which you've seen me doing other things. You can see there's a whole bunch of wires. I'm not going to film it all because that would take an hour or so, and that is a lot of time. And I try to condense them down because most of these videos are hours anyway, and I try to condense them down to make it easier and more viewable. One last thing, this piece right here, if this fails, deal with it. If you want to try and break it free from here, good luck. You're going to snap the base. I've already tried on this, and you're getting stress fractures in here. This is hard glued on, and the hard glue acts as a seal. It seals around here and this one LED. Now, if your base starts to leak because the hard glue is breaking down, silicone to silicone, smear it around the edges. If this is free, come off. Put some hard glue around and then silicone around the outer edges. Squish it on, put a weight on it for 2 days, and then reassemble. Because this is virtually impossible to remove to fix this light or to replace this mist disc because of how it is assembled. As one of the main reasons I think they discontinued this is because the misting system has a higher failure rate than most other things. So anyway, I shall return in your time in a couple of seconds, in my time in a couple of hours, with a fully rebuilt parts house that will replace this one. Be back in a moment. Here is the two houses combined to make one working house. I can't tip it because I just added some water to the mister, or the fogger. So, but when I went to go do it, I knocked the clip off. What I was telling you, that clip, the clip's on right here. So I'm going to hard resin that on and tape it on, and then it's got to sit for a day. But that attaches right here, and the glue broke. It's old and brittle. Like I said, it's a parts house that I got. So between the two, make a fully functional house. So in the meantime, I'm just going to rest this in here like it's supposed to, and we're going to turn it on. There you go. You can see the mist coming out.
Many a ship has been lost here on Dead Man's Reef, and the angry wretches
And you can kind of see it right here. So, the guy's rocking. As you can see, the light is rotating. Hopefully you can see it on my hand right there as it turns. And then this guy comes in and out of his door. Here we go. So, all the foam pieces are glued back on. I used glue gun. All together, this took hours. Turn the volume down. I'm actually gonna turn it off. And then I'm gonna switch to, you can see the fog just sitting in there. I'm gonna switch to a side view to make it a little easier to see. Because I can't tip this now, it's full of water. Well, it's not full, as you can see I didn't use a lot. Fifth of the bottle maybe. Whenever I do use a misting system, whether it's on this or on my Department 56 or other Lemax, I use bottled water. Mainly because hard water can leave the scale and residue. Bottled water is balanced in most cases. Distilled water doesn't always give you the same steaming effect because there's no minerals in the water to react. So to me, bottled water is the best blend. But anyhow, I'm going to switch views so you can see this from the front, and then we'll go over everything again. Here we go. See all that mist now coming out. Now if you can see the water droplets, this is a very messy unit. There's water getting everywhere. This helps deflect some of the water, but I would not have this in your area unless you had something under here for the mat. You can see the water is even on my bench. So, but here it is. 2 houses to make 1. I'm not a fan of the pirate stuff, but this is pretty cool looking in the dark. To me, the camera makes it look way better than it does in person because the camera picks up the fog lighting better than your eye does, because your eye can tell there's an LED in there. So you can see the hot spot in your eye a lot better, and then the mist around the eyeballs is way better than in person because the camera picks the light up all the way out. And we got all the lights working like they're supposed to. The light underneath, the light here, the lights in the windows, those 2 lights right there, light down the side, both eyes, the one in the water, the cannon. We got sound, well of course the rotating one. We got sound. He's rocking. Turn it back down. So, I wasn't able to fix the original one without getting assistance from a secondary one, and that is due to the fact that it was so broken up and screwed up. I needed to find another power supply, which the parts house came with. They thought the power supply was bad, it had a bad main circuit board, so just swapped them out, which is in here, inside this hard ceramic piece from this whole area. The glue I used, you might be able to see it. Let's turn on the light real quick. Kind of looks wet. I use a clear drying hard glue. Unfortunately, some of this is the factory like that, but around the base and stuff and the ladders that you break free, I use that. And you have to let it sit for a really long time, usually a day. This is a very loud piece, as you can tell. I wish it had an on-off switch for the mister, because look at all this water. Look at all that. It's everywhere. Kind of like the Isle of Creepy Jacks. You can turn the mister off. I wish this had that option. I really do. Because this thing is just so messy. But it's cool looking. It's so messy. And that's because the disc in here, instead of using the wick to the disc. The disc is actually vibrating the water. This dome is to catch the water and make it drip back down. Then the fan, which is right there, makes it blow the mist out. That's why this got this shroud here on the back to help push it out of the front, which it also pushes out the water droplets that aren't in a mist form, and then you get all this water everywhere. So I don't do a lot of reviews. This is a pretty neat piece. Doesn't fit my decor of Lemax or Department 56, but it is pretty cool. I do like the skull. I do like the way it looks on here, even without... Oops, knocked the plug. Because see where the wire is? When you put this in, you can catch and knock the plug out. And I'm not a fan of that part either. But to me, this mist is way too close to the power. I think the power should have been on the other side of the house, not over here, because it's too close to the water. I would be careful of watching for corrosion on the wires that come in. If that LED in the bottom burns out, screw it. Leave it. I wouldn't try and fix it. You might be able to jump off of one of these LEDs, solder one in to have it point down back here behind the shroud to make the mist glow, but I wouldn't try and break this free. Silicone too, like I mentioned a few moments ago on the video, I would use that to seal this if it starts to leak. This is not leaky water. This is the mist and the splash. I know I tested the parts house to make sure it actually held water, because even this cord is now getting wet right in here. And part of it's because I don't have the shroud on, but nonetheless, it's too close to have water near the electric, especially since it's 24 volts AC. You're talking more power. You're getting into the dangerous, where you could possibly hurt yourself, getting electric zap area of power. So, but outside of that, it's a pretty neat little house. This is a pain to repair, a pain to take apart. Granted, it came apart when I got it. It was already in pieces, partly UPS, partly the way it was sent. But the parts house had the missing pieces that this one was missing. It also isn't busted up. It just physically died. It physically died because the main circuit board inside here went out. And that was it. That was pretty simple. So between two houses, I have one, and now I have the other house's parts, because the other one still has the two other circuit boards that are good. Technically, the base is good because this does work, and I'm not going to separate it. And if somebody had one where they broke porcelain, I have the porcelain center section. I also have the mechanism for the door and the pirate who moves back and forth. Even though the shaft is broke, the mechanism's still in there, and the mechanism for the rotating light. Parts houses come in handy. I try to acquire them whenever I can, if they're reasonably priced or free. So it depends, but there we go. This is a now fully functional Isle of Doom, I think it was. I always forget the names. But it's not done in a full rebuild like I try to do. It's done taking a parts house that was in better shape porcelain-wise and plastic-wise, and putting the guts from the other house into it. That way it doesn't look horrible with all these pillars glued back together. You know, I try to fix them so they are as close to OEM as possible, even if that requires getting a another house to take parts off of. I have an entire box of parts houses that I use, and now I have one more to add to it. Sorry if I'm making you dizzy or sick. I'm just kind of giving anybody an all-around view of what this thing looks like, just in case you don't have this piece and it's something you're interested in getting. There's that. I am going to now drain the water. The easiest way to drain the water is you can tip it, lift the whole unit and tip it, or you can wick it out using a paper towel or a rag, or if you're thirsty, just drink the stuff. That's between you and your mouth, and I have nothing to do with that. So once I get the water out and dry up my bench, I'm going to glue this on. I'm going to tip the house onto its side, this side, glue it on and tape this, and then tomorrow, I always let it sit 24 hours, I'm going to make sure it's good and hard and not going to hopefully pop off again. Pop this on, repackage this thing back up, and get it ready to go back to its owner. So thanks for watching. Sorry that this wasn't super exciting, but if you have this piece, you basically have an idea how to take it apart with the pieces under the foam. And before you take it apart, check your power supply. Don't do what I did. I normally check the power supplies in advance, and I didn't. So that was my mistake, and I could have shortened this up a lot. So, but until the next one, keep watching. You have more coming down the pipe as soon as all the parts arrive. That's the biggest delay with anything right now, is getting pieces. Have a good one.